loans up to $2 million. The interest rates for these disaster loans are 3.75% for small businesses and 2.75% for nonprofit organizations with terms up to 30 years. A common question is, how can I use the loan funds? So these working capital loans may be used to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, other bills that could have been paid had a disaster not occurred. The loans are not intended to replace lost sales for profits or for expansion. And also wanted to just quickly discuss with you here the requirements in terms of what folks need to submit. So on our website, which is sba.gov/disaster, you can also go to disasterloan.sba.gov. There's a lot of really good information there, but there's going to be a checklist, and that checklist is going to provide the filing requirements. So they're going to list, the electronic loan application, which again, our regional administrator just mentioned. Given the current issues we're having with our website now, these can be downloaded, they can be completed, and then submitted via upload. There's going to be other filing requirements such as a tax authorization, most recent 3 years, business tax returns, personal financial statement, schedule of liabilities. But again, it's going to be dependent on the type of business that you have, and that's all laid out there. I also wanted to provide the SBA customer service number as well, which is 800-659-2955. And they have a website as well with an Office of Disaster Assistance, disaster customer service at sba.gov. So I hope that provides a little more detail in terms of the specifics with regards to the EIDL program. But if there are more questions, we'll gladly take them as they come in.
Thanks. Thanks for providing that update and overview. I do have a couple of questions that have come in as you've been talking. One question is, how fast do we have to bring people back if we want the SBA loan that requires 90% of employees through December, and we've already laid people off? Does it include temps we had when this started?
Vice Mayor, thank you. That's a great question. I think that question is germane to the legislation that is currently in front of Congress. The EIDL program is separate from that. So we are, at this point, singularly focused on our EIDL loan program. With that being said, we do anticipate that legislation will be passed hopefully tomorrow. And we have all been briefed on it, and we are ready to get out there and outreach and answer all those questions. Unfortunately, we are precluded as federal officials of commenting on existing legislation. But as soon as that legislation is passed, we're more than happy to come back and do another town hall and talk about all the different nuances of that legislation.
Okay, I had another question come in asking about, will there be small business administration loans that are 0%? We've heard from a lot of our business community that they don't want to take on loans, but if they do, even 3.5% is too high. Is there any talk of an SBA loan at 0%?
So our existing program is statutory, so that interest rate cannot be changed. However, a lot of the programs that are being talked about in the existing legislation do not have that same restriction. So the features of the EIDL loan is it really is an emergency loan to get you from point A to point B. Hopefully that point A to point B is 30 days and not 60 or 90 days, but there's enough capital there through that loan program to get you through that period of time. A couple of features that were just announced this Monday, the Administrator Carranza announced that typically with our EIDL program, so this is the program that gets ushered out when there are tornadoes and hurricanes. A lot of folks don't realize the SBA has a whole separate office, which is the disaster office. And these are the folks, these folks are the pros that swoop in after a hurricane, after a tornado, and they do the economic rebuilding. But typically there's a 4-month deferment, so a small business doesn't have to begin paying on that loan until 4 months after getting the loan. That was just extended on Monday for 12 months. So we're trying to ease the pain of that interest rate, but that interest rate is static. So a couple other things is that the loan can be as long as 30 years. So we're trying to extend the initial payment out. We're trying to extend the terms, all with an eye to trying to give the small business owner some breathing room and the ability to kind of recover before they have to make that loan payment back.
Okay, thank you. This question is for Congressman Clark. I think you mentioned this when in your original talking points, but are there any unemployment provisions in the recent federal stimulus package for gig economy workers? I'm an event producer of corporate events, and all of my work through June has been canceled, and I'm normally not eligible.
Yes, that is the good news, that normally you would not be eligible, but you are going to be under this package that the House will take up tomorrow morning. And we are very aware that many people who normally wouldn't be able to have unemployment insurance are going to be in a position where they will need it. And I wanted to add a little caveat, but also some more information to expand on what Wendell was saying, in that the caveat is this legislation isn't signed yet, but it will be a mix under the Paycheck Protection Program of grants and loans. So there will be up to $10,000 available in grants that can really help a small business who may not want to take on any debt. But I do want to emphasize that with the Paycheck Protection Program loans, they are going to be low interest. There will be no fee loans up to $10 million with repayment deferred for at least 6 months. And 100% of this loan will be forgiven if the borrower has retained the same number of employees as when they received the loan. We've gotten many, many questions about whether, if I already laid off workers, can I bring them back? Again, with the caveat that all the rules are not in place yet, but that is what we are anticipating, that you would be able to bring those employees back, have them count in your number for the loan so that you can continue to support them with payroll as well.
Thank you. I have another question. This also came up at another meeting that I was at today around child care centers, that a lot of our child care centers, because they are closed down, have no longer been charging tuition, but they're having a lot of trouble paying their teachers and want to keep them through this transition and through this crisis. Will there be grants or loans available to child care centers to ensure that they can pay their staff so that they're ready to go on day one when we're ready to send our kids back to school?
Yes, child care centers are going to be critical that we have them up online. And there is additional funding both through the Child Care Development Block Grants and through Head Start. But they are also going to be eligible as small businesses for these grant and loan programs. They should definitely take advantage of those. And also for their teachers, they will be able to qualify for unemployment insurance, even if they typically may not. And there will also be the direct payments that are going to be made to almost all Americans, a one-time payment of $1,200 to eligible individuals, $500 per child. So, and I think it's important to note that going back to the unemployment insurance, it will be put through a state formula, even though greatly expanded eligibility for that. But there will also be an additional $600 paid per month to every employee to make sure that they are able to get as close to full salary that they would have had to have a full paycheck as they can. And that will be covered by the federal government. So we do not anticipate that those costs will come back at some point to the employer.
Okay, great. I have one question that I'm not sure if this is for the Congresswoman or for the SBA. We've had a lot of businesses talk about their insurance not covering this type of interruption. Their business interruption insurance isn't covering this because they have a pandemic clause. Was there anything that was discussed at the federal or the state level to hold insurers accountable during this time so that businesses can draw on their insurance that they've been paying on, but however are now being told it's not covered under this particular scenario?
We have heard of this issue quite a bit. Unfortunately, the legislation that we received from the Senate does not address it head on. But I want people to know that we are aware of it. There will be a fourth package from Congress, so it's an issue that we are looking at. And I also think I misspoke earlier. That will be an additional $600 a week, not a month, in the unemployed insurance payment.
Okay, great. And then for the SBA folks, with the EIDL program, there used to be a prepayment penalty. Does that still exist with this program? And if so, what is the minimum term for these loans?
Peter, I'll allow you to handle the tough questions.
Okay, Wendell, thank you. So in terms of pre-penalty, no. So, you can pay off the loan ahead of time if you want to. If you also want to, under the EIDL program, apply for more. If you haven't hit that cap of $2 million, you can also come back and apply for more as well.
Okay.
And Alanna, I would just add there's no prepayment penalty on any of the new loans either.
Okay, great. I've got another question about loans. Can someone explain the difference between the small business disaster loan and the other no fee loan that was mentioned? I think that's probably for the SBA.
What was the no fee loan mentioned?
Was there a no fee loan? I'm not sure if you guys mentioned it.
I think that's what I'm referring to as the Paycheck Protection Program.
Okay.
No fee loans. And I don't know, Peter, can you describe the difference between that and the disaster?
So in terms of the economic injury disaster loan, compared with other SBA products, so SBA has a range of products, 7A loans, 504 loans, which are partially guaranteed by the SBA. Those loans are directly provided by the lending institutions, and there are assorted fees on those loans. But with the economic injury disaster loans, again, my understanding is that the fees would not apply because they're being delivered directly by the SBA rather than through the lenders.
Okay, great. I've got another couple of questions around, it seems like, as you might imagine, here in Cambridge, in Massachusetts, all over the country, there's a need for direct cash assistance to businesses. Lots of business owners are not willing or are not able to take on additional debt at this time. And some of these programs are not available to them. Has there been any conversation at the federal level or the state level beyond what we've talked about earlier, which was taking on a loan that will turn into a grant as long as some things, you keep your number of employees, et cetera? Is there any conversation at the federal or state level, like we're talking about for residents, mailing them a check? Is there anything like that on the federal level, perhaps in a forthcoming bill, Representative Clark?
There is nothing that will come automatically in the mail, but we have set up appropriate grants that will be up to $10,000, and it is a grant, so it does not need to be paid back. It is money that you can use as a small business owner with greatly expanded definition of what that is. To be able to cover those emergency expenses and payroll that you have already incurred. So it is really trying to get a cash infusion to our small businesses as quickly as possible. And that is, again, a grant that will not need to be repaid.
Okay. And then another question for you, Representative. Is unemployment insurance being modified in any way so that the state does not automatically raise business contribution rates next year due to staff collecting benefits from the COVID pandemic? Normally, when somebody is laid off, the rates charged the business increase the following period, which means that the business essentially pays a large portion of the benefits, and that could add an additional contribution for businesses who must temporarily close and lay off workers. So has there been any conversation about re-engineering sort of some of the rules and regulations around unemployment to really think about the widespread unemployment that these businesses are facing, and that they don't want to face a penalty in the future?
Yes, in the first bill that we did, we gave the state of Massachusetts an additional $25 million to help cover the costs of expanded unemployment insurance. But we go farther in this latest bill, in the CARE Act, and it will cover the full cost of unemployment insurance for the states, including the base amount and the weekly $600 increase. So that means there should be no need to go back and recoup the costs from the individual employers.
Great. I think another thing that we've been hearing a lot about, and I know that you've been on the forefront of this, Representative, is, and our Senator, thankfully, Senator Warren has been talking about no bailouts for large organizations like airlines or cruise ships or whomever, without having significant carve-outs to make sure that we're not bailing out Wall Street without thinking about Main Street. Are there anything that you are working on right now that are negotiations where, you know, bailing out the airline industry has to have some sort of carve-out for Main Street? And I can ask that question a different way if it was confusing.
No, I think I understand. It was a real concern, I can tell you, of the House Democratic Caucus as we watched the Senate bill unfold, that there were simply not enough restrictions on how this money could be used. And we know from previous help of tremendous taxpayer help for private industries that doesn't always end up benefiting the American workers. And the reason that we are helping this airline industry that has been hit so hard by this virus is because they represent over 1 million American workers, and we want to make sure that they are protected. So the airlines have agreed to many provisions to ensure that this money goes directly to the workers. And so that includes no dividends, not allowing stock buybacks, making sure that collective bargaining agreements are kept in place, restrictions on executive pay, and setting up for the $500 billion that is put aside to help private industry, a oversight board that will make sure that people who take taxpayer dollars are compliant with this and really keeping the workers foremost in their minds. And that includes making sure their healthcare benefits continue to exist and are paid. And it will ensure that we can keep millions of workers on the job, on the payroll, and that we have an airline industry and other industries that may need assistance going forward, ready to fly again, ready to open their doors again once they're able to, as we have contained this virus.
Okay, and then shifting gears, we've had a lot of conversation here in Cambridge around residents who are independent contractors and file 1099 forms, and they're not traditionally, eligible for unemployment insurance. With the stimulus package or any of the other bills, has there been any expansion of the unemployment insurance to include these types of workers who file 1099s?
Yes. So the unemployment insurance definitions of who is eligible has been greatly expanded. And we are aware that so many people now make their living in the gig economy, wouldn't normally be eligible for unemployment insurance. And we wanted to make sure that those employees, those people who run their own businesses, our contract workers, are also able to be eligible for unemployment. So it's a big expansion of that definition.
Okay, great. And then there was a question for the SBA around loans for sole proprietors. Can you expand on the requirements for sole proprietors to qualify for the SBA loan that you mentioned? Can they also have the loan relieved under certain criteria? I think the question is differentiating between a small business and somebody who's a sole proprietor.
Absolutely, a sole proprietor is eligible under the EIDL loan program.
Great. And I think the second question was, can they have the loan relieved under the same certain criteria?
I'm not exactly sure what that's speaking to, but there is no differentiation between a sole proprietor or an LLC or other type of small business entity.
Okay. And then for Representative Clark, I got this question. Will green card holders be able to get a check from the federal bill just passed? Is that something that we know yet, or is that something that will be coming out?
Yes, anybody will be eligible for these different forms of relief if you have a Social Security number.
Okay. And then for Representative Clark, this is an interesting question. Is there any plan to nationalize failing too big to fail banks, businesses like Boeing and airlines banks, rather than bailing them out or letting them fail?
Well, that is an ongoing debate. In this particular legislation, it is going to be more direct payments with the restrictions that I talked about and the oversight from a new board that will be appointed to make sure that the different industries that receive taxpayer funding are accountable and are making sure that their priorities remain with their employees and with their workers. And particularly with the airline industry, we wanted to make sure that not only the pilots and flight attendants and maintenance crews, but also some of those contractors who clean planes, do other sorts of jobs, were included in this package. So it is a package that is a compromise, but is one that we feel goes a long way to ensuring that we can protect the over $1 million jobs in that one industry. And we very hard, we will go back and adjust if we need to, but we have put in some restrictions that we simply haven't seen before when there have been taxpayer bailouts of different industries. We certainly understand that this isn't brought on by anyone's business practices. This is a natural disaster caused by a virus, but we also want to make sure that we have accountability. This whole package is $2 trillion, which is so much money that it's really kind of hard to take in, but it reflects the enormity of the financial impact that is going to be ranging from very small businesses to very large industries. And we want to be responsive as we can be to the American people and American workers, but also keep restrictions and accountability and be responsible when we are giving private industry billions of dollars in money to keep them afloat.
Okay, great. And then there were some questions about timing, both on the timing for, obviously this legislation hasn't passed yet, but in terms of the timing of checks to residents, how soon could we see those? So that's the first question. And then for the SBA, if people have already submitted their applications, or earlier this week or when the program was announced, how soon will it be until they find out whether or not they qualify for the loan or are getting the loan? So first to Representative Clark and then to the SBA.
I don't have an exact timing on the checks, but we are certainly going to be urging the administration to do it as quickly as possible. Our next step and hurdles to get this bill passed tomorrow morning in the House. I'm very optimistic that's going to happen. And then we will be getting it to the president's desk and getting to work on issuing those checks. So we're trying to do it as quickly as possible. We know people are in financial pain, and there's a lot of anxiety about bills that are mounting and providing those basic necessities for their families. So we are hoping to get these programs rolled out as quickly as possible. And we appreciate how much work this is going to be for the SBA, and have given them another $650 million to be able to expand their capacity, hire new people, so that we can get these programs up and running and get relief to small businesses and families.
And if I could just ask a follow-up question, I think everyone's looking forward to receiving some sort of assistance, cash assistance from the government. But to that end, what is the likelihood that we would see a suspension of mortgage and other debt payments for a period of time on the federal level? I think the concern is people are going to be getting their checks and just turning around and paying their mortgage with it and their rent with it, and not actually using it for things that people really need right now, like food, like medicine, like all of the other things that are not rent or mortgage related. I think that's the number one concern for people right now is, yes, they need the cash in hand. However, if we're going to just turn it around and give it right back to the banks and to the lenders, then I'm not. Anyways, one of the questions is there any sort of talk on the federal level about mortgage relief at this point?
Yes, there is, and it is not explicitly in this bill, but we are still talking about moratoriums on foreclosures. I do want people to be aware that evictions have been suspended in Massachusetts, and we urge everyone to contact your lender. And whether you have a mortgage, or contact your landlord if you are renting, and see if you can get some leeway. I think that nobody wants to be able to put their credit at risk. We do have credit protections in this bill that we're going to pass tomorrow to make sure that people's credit rating isn't impacted by financial hardships they may experience during this time. But it is very much open for discussion, and FHA and Fannie Mae and Freddie have all suspended their foreclosures. So if you have a loan from those institutions, those are suspended. But if you have a private lender, we urge you to contact them. And we'll be sending out information on how to do that and how to get a hold of resources that can be helpful for you if you're concerned about that very shortly.
Okay, thank you. And then back to the SBA, the question that I had asked about timing was, if people had already filled out their application online, when might they hear back whether or not they were accepted?
Yeah, with respect to the SBA EIDL program, we've been given a 14 to 21 day outside window. Once it's approved, it's a 5 to 7 day window in terms of turning it around to actually get the money in the hands of a small business owner. And a large part of the 21 days and the spread between 14 and 21 is making sure that the small business owner gets all of the information that the SBA needs to process that application.
Okay, so it can take up to 21 days for somebody to hear back.
Correct.
Okay.
No, not to hear back, to get funded.
Oh, to get funded. Okay, so it's 21 days.
So that's the outside window. The one variable that we can't control is an incomplete application. So, and I think it's important to know also, as part of that application process, there is the online portal that we talked about. But the SBA, the district offices, Peter's on the phone, Bob Nelson is the district director in Boston. These folks have worked all weekend. They're working extended hours. And when you think of the SBA, don't think of just the SBA district office, but all of our resource partners have been trained on our program and are ready to help. And that includes our women's business centers, our SCORE volunteers, our small business development centers. And when you add us all up, there's a lot of folks out there that are ready to help folks through that application process.
Okay, and then to that end, we have a question about, well, whether or not all these new loan and grant programs will be administered by the SBA, or are you going to be working with local lenders right here in our community to play a role in that?
I mean, as proposed, the SBA 7A program will be implicated, and it will be a symbiotic relationship with all of the state, federal partners, and the local and regional banks and national banks.
Okay.
And I've been told that we have up to 2,000 banks across the country that will be working very closely on these loans and making sure that we can get them out. And I just wanted to update that with the direct payments, the goal is by April 6th. We do anticipate delays, but that is the goal. And if you already have a direct deposit with the federal government, we'll be able to do it through that system.
Okay, great. I've gotten a couple of questions from hair salons. Whether or not a hair salon with a self-employed stylist, would they be eligible for unemployment under these new regulations?
Yes.
Great. Great. I have a question for Congresswoman Clark around credit card interest that we had talked about earlier. I think it was at the last Cambridge Local First meeting. Many small retailers deal in credit card debt in the absence of real bank loans in order to pay for inventory. Could credit card interest for business held credit cards be subsidized / waived during this pandemic?
We have put some provisions in the bill to protect small businesses and nonprofits from debt collection, but none of them would outright suspend credit card payments. And again, I would urge everyone to work. I know that many work with their lenders. Many credit card companies are suspending payments for people. So we really do urge them to contact your credit card company if you're concerned.
And I think that's a really good point, Congresswoman. I was speaking with Cambridge Savings Bank yesterday, and they've announced that for the next 6 months, they are waiving all interest and fees on currently held small business loans, and that they are talking to each and every one of their clients. And it's really important for people to call and just talk with your bank about what is available, some of the things that they might be thinking about doing, and they are willing to work with you. But Cambridge Savings Bank is doing a fee and interest waiver over the next 6 months, and we're really hoping that some of the other banks follow suit. We know that Rockland Trust is also doing something similarly. So I think it's really important, like you said, to do that work and reach out individually, and then let us know if you're hearing that there isn't a lot of movement, because we can be good advocates on the local level, on the state level, and the federal level. I have another question. Let's see. This is a fun little thing here on the side. It's hard to keep up. There's so many questions, but are any of these programs written in a way that would make you ineligible for one if you received another? So, some of the SBA loans and programs, it seems like there's a lot of them, and you wouldn't want to apply for one if all of a sudden you would realize down the road that it made you ineligible for another program that could be more helpful. I'm going to throw that to the SBA.
Yeah, no, that's great. So right now we are counseling people to apply because there's no fee it's free to apply. We will know more once the legislation is passed. I can tell you folks, including Representative Clark, they are aware of the EIDL program. But again, until that legislation is passed, I can't speak to that, but folks are well aware of the two programs. And
Okay.
once you apply, right, you're going to have an opportunity if a decision needs to be made to make that decision. But folks are well aware of the two programs and the need to have compatibility.
Okay, great. And you said that there is a customer service line if people need to ask that question of a person and they're specific. situation?
there's a customer service line, and there are individuals ready to help out for those types of questions.
Okay, one last question for the SBA, and then we're going to pivot back to our local panel. Do the SBA disaster loans require a personal guarantee with a minimum personal credit score? And if so, what is the minimum personal credit score required to qualify?
Peter, I'll let you handle that.
Okay, Wendell, thank you. So with regards to credit score, I'm not aware of a minimum credit score that is required. Credit is definitely considered, but no, specifics in terms of it must be a certain, threshold or criteria that I'm aware of. But it is part of the overall package that, when folks submit an application, it is being considered. So it's credit history, repayment ability, and then eligibility, the three things we had discussed earlier. And then just to add on too, as Wendell just said, there is no cost to apply under the EIDL program. And there is no obligation to take the loan if it's offered either. And the maximum unsecured loan amount is $25,000. So just wanted to share that as well.
Great. Okay, thank you. I want to thank Representative Clark for joining us, and thank Wendell Davis and Peter Kontakos from the Small Business Administration for being here, for answering so many questions. I did not get to all of the questions that were asked on the side panel here. We will be formatting them and sending them out, and hopefully you'll be able to answer them at a later date. Or like I said, we are trying to work with the city's website to see if on our small business COVID page that we have up on our website, that we can do an FAQ and get to these questions and answers as soon as possible. Like I think we were talking about earlier, some of this is really very pending legislation, and some of it's a little bit unknown, but there is a great need in the community right now to understand quickly how they can be supported and what the applications are and what's available to them. So thank you, Congresswoman Clark, for being here, for fighting so hard for us in Congress. I know it looks like you are sitting in the middle of the Charles River, but I imagine that's not exactly where you are. So thank you for being here. If you had any final last words you want to say, please feel free.
I just want to thank you, Madam Vice Mayor and Madam Mayor, for holding this, and really thank my partners, not only in local government, but at the SBA. I have a lot more freedom to talk about pending legislation, but they are the ones who are really going to be our front lines in helping businesses recover in this very challenging time. So I hope we will be keeping information coming, like the City of Cambridge. We are going to try and get frequently asked questions so that people can understand how they can access these new loans and grants and unemployment insurance. It's complicated, but we are here to help. We want people to access this money. We encourage you to apply. There's no penalty for applying for multiple ones. And we really are trying to be as flexible as possible so that we can be as helpful as possible. But again, thank you as always for being wonderful partners on the local level. And I hope that anyone who has questions or concerns will contact my office. We are not in the office physically, but we are constantly there on our phones, on our email, on our website to respond to any needs you might have. So please don't hesitate. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Wendell Davis and Peter Kontakos from the Small Business Administration. I'd love to figure out a way for us to have a feedback loop on some of these outstanding questions that people have. I think it's over the next coming weeks, it's going to just be very, very critical for our small business owners to understand where we are, even day to day. Every single day, things are changing, and their situations are evolving very, very rapidly as we are moving through this pandemic together, but that our main streets have been, as we know, hit very, very hard. So if you guys want to drop off, you can hit the end meeting and go off on your day, and we're gonna pivot now to some hyper-local stuff and talk with our own city staff around some of the initiatives that are happening here locally and answering some questions that our small businesses might have. So joining us now, we have Pardis Safari from our Cambridge Economic Development Division, who you all know probably very well. She's been working tirelessly. I know she was working all weekend on some outstanding things that she's really, really excited about and wants to tell you all about today. And we also have, after Pardis, we're going to be hearing from Gail Willett, who is our new assessor, who is wonderful. She comes to us from Boston. She has a really innovative and creative way of thinking about taxes, which, I mean, God bless her, I don't. So she is here to give us a local perspective and really talk to us about what can be done and answer your questions. I know a lot of people have questions about taxes, about bills, about what the city can do to support and mitigate some of the financial crises that some of you are finding yourselves in. So I'm going to kick it over to Pardis at this point to talk about, I know on last week's call, on the Cambridge Local First Call, the Economic Development Division was tasked with coming up with some interesting things. So I'm going to let her tell you about where she's at. So take it away, Pardis, and I'm going to mute myself so nobody hears my papers rustling.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Mallon. For those joining us, thank you for being a part of the town hall. I just wanted folks to know we're very aware of the issues that are going on for many of our small business owners, and I very much appreciate the efforts of the business associations as well as the businesses themselves for reaching out to the city. The more we know about what's going on, the more we can be helpful to you. So one of the things that came out of the CLF meeting last week was asking for the city to create an online database of businesses here in the city of Cambridge that are open, closed, and if they are open, if they're doing takeout or delivery. And one thing we also added is that many of our retailers are switching to e-commerce. So we have included that in the database. We have about over 700 businesses on that online database that you can find on the city's website. But if you do not see yourself there, or perhaps your hours have changed, maybe you're slowly going to takeout or you're slowly going to e-commerce, please feel free to email me and we will be happy to update your business's open or close schedule. We are planning to keep that database going for as long as we're in this situation, and also a little bit afterwards, so that the public can be very much aware of what's going on with their favorite businesses. And just so folks know, it's as soon as we posted that website, I think on Sunday, it was one of the most popular pages at in the city of Cambridge's websites. So the nice thing to know is that people really do care about the small businesses here at the city.
Thanks, Pardis. I just wanted to say that during last week's Cambridge Local First Call, there was some questions around funding, grant funding that might be available from the city of Cambridge. Is there any news or anything that you can share on that end? Yes, this is probably the most exciting news I'll be offering this afternoon. But thankfully to we were able to use some of our HUD funds to allow for us, the city, to install a new small business COVID-19 relief grant for businesses in the city who are familiar with our other CDBG programs, Community Development Block Grant Funds. This is a little different in that it's not a reimbursement grant, it's a straight up working capital grant. So for those of you who are trying to pay rent, utilities, for restaurants who have bills to pay for perishable foods that you can no longer use, this is an opportunity where we can provide a certain amount of businesses up to $6,000 for those working capital needs. The application is open and available online. We are taking applications as of today all the way until May 1st. This is first come, first serve. And we're hopeful through some of this new legislation that's coming down through the federal government, we can continue to provide CDBG and other funding in the future.
Oh, Alanna, you're muted.
Got a note. Okay, so that's so great. That's great to hear that the city is working with those CDBG grants and putting them to good use during this time. I'm excited about that. Is there a website? Is there an application that you can connect people to right now?
Yes, if you go to the Cambridge's COVID site, so cambridgema.gov/COVID-19, you'll see there's a business section and it's right on there. Again, people can also email me at psafari, that's 2 F's, at cambridgema.gov. And I'm also happy to send you the link. And also many of our business association leaders have also have the link and have sent it through as well.
Awesome. Okay, great. This is a question for EDD. It's a question I've received myself, and I know a lot of people are wanting, especially restaurants that have moved to a takeout model. What's the latest on allowing restaurants to provide sell beer and wine to go? Is that something that is, I think it's pending in the legislature, but if you could give us any update, that would be great.
Yeah, I think we're still waiting for the legislation at the state level, because anything with any alcohol, whether beer, wine, or otherwise, is determined by the state. So I think once we hear from them, I'm sure the License Commission will be communicating to all liquor license holders.
Great. And then just to go back to something earlier that you were talking about, how does somebody get themselves registered on the link that you were talking about if they aren't currently on it? They're open for business, but they don't see themselves on there.
Sure, they can email me directly. And I think if the link is not already up there, we'll add the link this afternoon where people can fill out the form themselves and include all the information, their social media handles, whatever information they want the public to know.
Great. Okay, I've got some questions for Gail around taxes. I think this is a hot topic here in the community, really thinking about the quarterly taxes are coming up. How are we addressing some of these and thinking about mitigating them for our small business owners? So are there, some businesses are paying property taxes to Cambridge. What can be done to mitigate those taxes for small businesses to support the recovery? Could we go to a pay by month instead of quarterly? This would have the effect of alleviating some financial pressure.
So we have been looking into different options with the city manager and with different departments. I would say that unfortunately, individual cities don't have the ability to make these kinds of changes to tax bills. Most of that is held by the state legislature. So we have been in contact with the Department of Revenue and other state representatives to discuss if any changes can be made. What I can relay is that on Tuesday, the governor proposed extending municipal tax bill deadlines to June 1st. And this will also allow municipalities to waive late payments for tax bills. I did want to relay that the city is going to be sending out tax bills in the next couple days. They will be due May 1st, and we are hoping that this legislation passes, which would allow us to push the due date off to June 1st in order to give some breathing room to some of the small businesses, and this would also be eligible for homeowners too. I think the other piece that I did want to talk about is last week, the governors announced administrative relief for small businesses, and this is in regards to sales tax, meals tax, and rooms tax. The state is postponing the collection of regular sales tax, meals tax, and room occupancy taxes that would normally be due in March, April, and May, and will instead be due on June 20th. And with that, they're waiving all interest and penalties.
Great. I know that this is a really big topic of conversation, the number of bills that are about to hit, right? We're about to hit April 1st. There's a bunch of rent due. There's now going to be taxes due. The water bill is going to be due. I know that the water department isn't your area, but is there any talk about pushing the water bill due dates as well?
We've been having some internal discussions about that. I was in on a meeting this morning where that was being discussed. I do not believe that we have reached any kind of resolution on that, but I would say the nice thing is that the water bills are a little more flexible than the property tax bills. But I think as we move forward and meet on that, when we have something to report, we certainly will.
Okay, great. I think that's another reason to get those FAQs up on the small business COVID website, just to keep that sort of information rolling out to people. If people have one place that they can go and check, I'm getting overloaded with information. There's a lot of different places to check. I think if that website was one-stop shop about what Cambridge is doing, what the state is doing, what is happening federally that is helping to support our small businesses, I think that would be optimal. So I'm just going to have another push to let's make sure and prioritize that.
It's a great idea.
Great. Okay.
I did also want to add that the city manager is having meetings with all the departments this week to look at things that the city actually can do, actionable items, fees and permits that the city does have the ability to waive. And we're looking for things that are absolutely within our control to be able to do that. I think some of the things are the finance department has already removed the convenience fees and credit card and ACH payment fees for anybody who wants to pay anything online.
Great. I'm loving the way Cambridge is trying to be innovative and flexible. I think it's going to be really important to support our small businesses through this, to really think outside of the box. I know there's so many restrictions put on us by the state, but if there was ever a time for the state to really relax some of those restrictions, or for us to try to be creative, now's that time. I think pandemic has shown us, particularly this sector and the nonprofit sector, how fragile everybody is, and dependent on people to come in and shop, and we're basically telling people they can't go outside, and so the people, the Main Street that is getting really hit hard by this. I think for us to continue being flexible, creative, and really kind of go out there and push the state to think about how to do things differently. Cambridge can certainly do that and partner with our neighboring municipalities. I know that Pardis and Gail, you both participate with regional conversations along the greater Boston area, Brookline, Arlington, Somerville. If we were acting as a block together, I think we could get a lot done. So I just wanted to say there's one more question and I actually got this question earlier today, so I'm glad that Bob Perry of Cheapo Records asked it. During the lockdown of non-essential businesses, are retail business owners allowed to go into their shops, provided that they are closed to the public, to work on e-commerce business? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
So I can try to answer this. When the state ruling came down, the non-essential businesses had to close. There is a line in there about e-commerce, and we did ask the state to confirm and clarify that. And we are told that the owner of a business is allowed to go into their store and conduct e-commerce. So I know for many businesses, as they're looking at ways to continue to open and serve their customers, know that you can do e-commerce.
Okay, great. At this point, it's 4:45. I want to shout out, we've got two Business Association executive directors here, both who have been working very hard to connect their businesses to supports. I'm going to introduce Michael Monestein, the executive director of the Central Square Business Improvement District, who together with his team put together a district impact report, and just to have him highlight some of those some of those items from the impact report, and then some of the policies and procedures that they're asking us to really deeply think about, and then kick it over to Theo afterwards. So Michael, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor Mallon, for the opportunity. I'll just take a brief moment of time. The impact study, the assessment, and our recommended policies for emergency relief to small businesses represent the combined efforts of small business organizations, advocacy groups, and most importantly, hundreds of business owners whose futures hang in the balance as they balance protecting their families, businesses, staffs, families, and livelihoods. Between the co-authors of this study, over 500 businesses and organizations are represented, and it's their collective voice we are working to amplify. A quick high-level summary of our recommended relief measures. There's 8 of them. Since a week and a half ago, we've been calling for the immediate closure of non-essential businesses to mitigate the loss of life in our communities, to establish an emergency relief fund that issues grants to small businesses affected by COVID-19. Small businesses need immediate funds and cannot be asked to take on more debt as a condition of relief programs. Third, we require insurance companies to honor business interruption claims. As of 3/19/20, New Jersey legislature is considering legislation requiring insurance companies to pay claims related to losses caused by COVID-19. Four, we're looking for waiving state, local meals and sales taxes for Q1 2020 through Q1 2021. Again, as of 3/19/20, Massachusetts had delayed collection of state, local meals and sales tax incurred in March, April, and May of 2020 until June of 2020. We are recommending that the taxes incurred during these months are waived and not deferred. We're looking to see an option of emergency rent rebate tax credit program. The state government should empower municipalities to offer credits against real estate taxes to landlords for rebates offered to eligible small business tenants. And you can learn more about that program and download this survey on our website at www.centralsq.org. 6, we require banks to provide mortgage relief to commercial property owners who cannot afford to make loan payments. New York State has enacted mortgage relief for homeowners. We're recommending the same protections be extended to commercial property owners in Massachusetts. 7, we would love to see expanded unemployment insurance protections. And 8, institute anti-eviction protections for commercial tenants. So as of 3/19/20, Massachusetts had enacted a moratorium on residential evictions. We are recommending the same moratorium be extended to commercial tenants as well. The document in summary is over 140 pages. I really encourage you all to go look at it. Most of the pages in that survey are testimonial of small businesses, just giving their heart and soul as to how the crisis is affecting Main Street.
So thank you, Michael, and thank you for putting that together. I know your team worked really hard on that. I think it was really instructional for our team here in the city to really understand what it's like right on the ground in that moment. A lot of times we don't get that information right when we need it to make the decisions and work on programs that can be flexible and can help. So I really want to say thank you to you and your team for putting that together. And if people don't, is there something where we can post it? It's posted on Facebook, or is it somewhere where we could send it out through here?
Absolutely. I'll send the link over now. But again, you can head to centralsq.org and it's downloadable right from our website. But I'll make sure you can share it with all the attendees as well.
Okay, great. And then I wanted to introduce Theo.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? So
thanks.
I wanted to just introduce Theo. She's the executive director of Cambridge Local First, and brought together a big community conversation of about 70 to 100 small businesses last Thursday to talk about how they are being impacted, much like Michael did in Central Square, trying to get an understanding and clarity around what is most necessary and needed. So I just wanted to get over to Theo to talk about that work and what's been happening since.
Great. Thanks so much, Alanna. So last week we had a 70-person community conversation. We had stakeholders from all different sectors in the city provide updates, much like this conversation. And we had about 50 businesses on the phone as well, providing updates on the hardships that they've experienced in the last few weeks. It was a really challenging conversation, but also one that was very helpful and productive and provided a lot of content for today's conversation. Taking a step back, so we have a 3-pronged value proposition, and our ongoing efforts center on small business assistance, education to the public, and advocacy. So first, on small business assistance, we are connecting businesses, with needed resources and providing technical assistance as they transition their services to online platforms like Zoom. We're also organizing a fundraiser for Scout Magazines, a critical partner of ours, and one that is in trouble. We are disseminating critical information, including grants, loans, and services to our members daily. We are supporting rent release efforts. We are actively amplifying small businesses across social media with a focus on the business owners and their families. We're also sharing information about online food delivery platforms with our members so that they can transition to online delivery. We are amplifying existing organizing efforts among different industries, including restaurants and hospitality, and farmers, ranchers, and fishermen. We are working with a local startup community phone to offer free talking, texting, and office number forwarding to our members. We are helping our members identify creative sources of funding, including crowdfunding with Mainvest. We are partnering with Somerville counterparts to support Somerville-based businesses. Our website also lists resources, but we will partner with the CDD EDD to make sure that there's one consolidated list as opposed to multiple. And we're now translating the terms of the federal stimulus package into understandable and actionable items for our business members. Second, on education, we are maintaining an online list of open small businesses, amplifying it to the public and encouraging them to consume locally. We are amplifying small businesses across social media to the public, and our driving message is threefold. First, order food takeout from local restaurants. Second, order merchandise from local businesses. And third, buy gift cards now for later use and donate to GoFundMe campaigns for businesses and their employees. We're also partnering with local media, namely the Cambridge Day and Scout Cambridge, to highlight the stories of our members to the public. And we're generating data and insights from the COVID-19 Impact Survey, which was sent to all of our members. We're also supporting and amplifying the Sustainable Business Network of Massachusetts directory of local businesses in the Boston and Greater Boston area that remain open during this time. We're organizing a Harvard Club panel of businesses and nonprofit stakeholders in this ecosystem to discuss our efforts. We're disseminating information to the public over frequent newsletters. And third and last, on advocacy, we are co-organizing 2 national advocacy efforts. The first is the Save Our Economy Now effort in partnership with the American Independent Business Alliance and American Sustainable Business Council. This is a national campaign to encourage the federal government to adopt 5 recommended steps, all listed on our website. We've had hundreds of businesses and nonprofits sign on as partners, and nearly 1,000 folks sign the petition. Second, we're partnering with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance to forward a second campaign that recommends 5 other steps that the federal government should take to enable small businesses to survive this crisis. We're working closely with elected officials and government agencies to push for policies that support our small businesses. And last but not least, we are an active member of the Cambridge Nonprofit Coalition, discussing shared best practices and resources across nonprofits working on the front lines in Cambridge. So just to recap, we're doing small business assistance, education to the public, and advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Theo and Michael and Jason and Denise, who are doing this critical work within either your squares or citywide, as Theo is doing. I think it's really so important right now that we continue to hear from you as you aggregate what is happening right there on the Main Street level, and really make sure that we are hearing directly from small business owners and how we can support them. One question I did want to ask both of you as we think about, the looming April 1st. I can't believe it's still March, but April 1st is coming up very quickly. I know that on sort of a higher level, we have been working with, the larger commercial landlords to really talk about mitigating rent relief. MIT is actually, they're foregoing all rent for the foreseeable future. That's triple net everything. So I know that I've talked to some of our other larger commercial our landlords, and they are working with each and every tenant. Have you guys been working with any of your local commercial landlords to really talk about what it looks like to renegotiate rent for April 1st and going beyond? I'm going to just go to Michael first and then Theo.
So business improvement districts are formed by property owners who want to see supplemental services within a defined area. we've been working with our property owners and have been on the phone for the past 2 days, working to see where relief is going to come from for our small businesses. As you mentioned, Matimco and also Brookfield have been great in giving relief of rents and that triple net fee to its tenants. And we're advocating on behalf of all of our businesses and small property owners to enact something similar. Everyone has different circumstances, so just going by a case-by-case basis to see where we might be helpful in massaging that conversation to make it a little easier and loosen the tension between tenant and property owner.
And Michael, if I can just follow up and ask, have there been any successes in approaches? If we are all thinking about how we might approach landlords, I know there's a lot of business owners online that may not have an advocate like you or Denise or Jason in their community. Have there been any successes or any kind of a blueprint that you found that might work for individuals?
Honest conversations have been working best. A lot of the small property owners were waiting to see what the feds were doing, how relief was going to roll out on a federal level, state level, which would inform how they move forward. A lot of the small property owners are working with their banks to refinance, get in a better position with their banks in regards to their own debt before identifying the relief they'll give to their tenants. I think it's one where it needs to be a constant conversation between the two, and one that we'll deal with now and for however long this crisis continues to last.
Yeah, I think that's an important point as we're 4 days away from April 1st. Now that we know, we have a little bit of a sense of what's happening federally and at the state level, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be any quick action to financially relieve some of our small business owners. And so now is kind of that time to have that conversation, I think, with your individual landlords around, there's money forthcoming from the government, there are loans, there are grants, but they're not going to be quick. They're not going to be in the next 4 days. What can we do together to really talk about rent relief? Because I am increasingly concerned, and I'm sure all of you who are here listening and on the line are that, besides employees, your rent and your triple net leases are the number one cost that you have per month. So having those honest conversations and really thinking about negotiating, I think, unfortunately, it's not something that I can do is go out to every single landlord. We have been working with the larger landlords to really think about how they can mitigate the rent at this point and take that worry off of our small business owners. And I have to say the larger commercial landlords that I've spoken to they understand that their commercial tenants who may be up above, when they come back after this crisis, and I keep saying, and I think Congresswoman Clark was very clear, we will come back from this, but if their commercial tenants come back and there's no Main Street and they don't have the local restaurants and shopping and the people that they saw every single day when they got their coffee or they went to I think they understand how critical this is, that Main Streets are absolutely a critical thing in our conversation right now. And there's a lot of talk of supporting them. So I talk to your banks, talk to your landlords. We are going to do everything that we can on the city side. I know that the state and the federal level is really, really looking at this, and it has been heartening for me to see how much I feel like in the last financial crisis, there was a lot of talk about bailing out Wall Street. And I think we learned a lot of lessons. I think a lot of people learned a lot of lessons that the Main Street got left out, and we can't have that again. The small businesses in our community are the lifeblood. They're the beating heart of who we are and who we are as a community. And so it's going to become very, very critical for us to all work together. We're unfortunately, and this went by very, very fast. We have about 1 minute left. I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here. Everyone who's joined us on Facebook Live, on CCTV here as a participant and asking great questions. We didn't get to all of them, but I will be putting together an FAQ and hopefully get those questions answered for you right away. Thank you to Gail. Thank you to Pardis. Thank you to Michael and Theo. And I really want to have a huge shout out to CCTV, Sean over at CCTV for really running the technology, and to Hong, who's working with me in my office right now to bring this technology and this town hall to you. It's the first time we've done this here in Cambridge, and I hope that it went well. I hope that the technology worked for everyone, and I look forward to having more of these content-specific town halls in the future. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining us.